Let's talk Spider-Man. New Spider-Man show on Disney Plus. The
The
last set of
friendly.
episodes just came out a couple days ago. What do y'all think about it? We kind of binged it over the last couple days so that we can come up with some content this week. And at least me personally, I really enjoyed it. I don't remember the last time I binged a Marvel show like that. Uh, X-Men '97 was great. I really enjoyed it, but I kind of let it kind of slow burn from episode to episode. But this one, I just needed to know like what happened, from like the first episode where I believe it ends with Norman Osborn coming over to their house to try to recruit him for the internship, and all the way to the last episode where him and Tombstone, they kind of diverge, and that's kind of gonna be the last time they're gonna be on good terms. At least that's what we're hoping as fans, and you see them planning the seeds of all the different storylines, Doctor Octopus and Osborn finding all of the Octavius tech, which we're assuming will lead to Green Goblin, and uh, even Rhino and Chameleon, and all these things are being put in place. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that it was like in parallel to the MCU. It was like the MCU adjacent. We saw the Sokovia Accords. We even saw the little screenshot of Ant-Man grabbing War Machine in the air, just like we saw in Captain America: Civil War. But there's obviously differences because Spider-Man's not part of all of that, and Tony's not the one to recruit him. And I liked all those changes, and it kept it so that hey, we have the liberty to do whatever we want. We're not confined by what the movies are doing, but we can use the knowledge from the movies and all of the lore that they've established and just apply it wholesale whenever we feel like it too. So I really enjoyed it. I think that's what the MCU is supposed to be. Um, is it perfect? I don't think so, but there are definitely a lot of things to like about it. But yeah, I want to see what are your guys' thoughts on the show?
Spidey's my favorite. He's always been my favorite superhero of the Marvel universe. Um, there's just always something very just relatable. You hear it all the time. Um, doesn't matter who's under the mask. Whether it's Peter, whether it's Gwen, whether it's Miles. The many many faces and variants of Peter in all types of ways, or different versions. It's a very relatable character. That's why he's the most. He's pretty much the poster boy for Marvel, even though he's not the strongest. Even though he's very strong. But there's just something very wholesome that everyone connects to when it comes to Spider-Man. I was actually very worried about the series before it came out. I personally thought the art style, even though it did take, inspiration from the classic art style of comics back from like the 70s, 80s, the Ditko style. I just thought that there was something almost janky like in the movements I felt looking at the trailers initially. Um, and I think that's because they were actually operating it from a sense of like a 2D, you know, animation moving in that way for like a modern time. So kind of like you're reading a comic come to life in that sense. Very differently than watching something like Into the Spider-Verse, where I felt like there was more fluidity because of the 3D space that they were also kind of utilizing with the 2D animations and like different frames and all that. And you can tell like they also used certain framings for this. I thought, like I said, at first I was a little skeptical, but it didn't bother me after I started watching. I just really enjoyed the story. From the setups, like you pointed out at the end of the series, I really enjoyed what they did with Lonnie. It's kind of sad because it's almost that fallen here, like that fallen hero type of thing, because he's a really good kid. Little brother did something stupid. I'm pretty sure, we're older siblings and we have younger siblings. We want to always look out for that younger sibling. And so it's just kind of sad to see, him take that responsibility from his younger brother and lose out on potentially a promising football career, and you know to become what we know is eventually Tombstone. And we see how even at the end, I was wondering, was he going to his skin color was going to change immediately? So I was kind of shocked when they being showed. I was like, oh, that's kind of a bit of a departure. And then when we see at the end how it's peeling on his hands, it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Um, but yeah, like you said, probably last time we'll ever see them together. It was nice seeing Daredevil in there. Um, what I really liked about this universe being adjacent to the MCU, Tom Holland Spider-Man, is that I've always had this theory about the multiverse saga, about them setting up certain things um, so that when for the I don't necessarily want to give away spoilers, but spoiler alert, if you want to skip ahead maybe the next 20, 30 seconds, probably just 15, 20 seconds here, but essentially I'm about to say now, but essentially the ending of Secret Wars, where we're heading, after Doomsday and everything, the multiverse, different patches of the multiverse come together. That's where we get Battle World. They fight and all that, and then once everything is restarted, we kind of get a culmination of all the different universes back together in this one main timeline. And so I feel like they're doing certain things that we already had like a setup, So that's kind of the end of my spoiler there. But essentially, Tom Holland Spider Man doesn't have any of these characters, not really in his rogue gallery. We were already told Osborn doesn't exist, so there's no Harry, there's no Norman. We know that, well, we don't necessarily know, but it seems like there's no Otto Octavius. There's definitely a Scorpion, there was a Vulture, but maybe not in the timeline anymore because of
The blip.
Sony, but yeah, Sony's all, whatever. But we have to get some type of way for him to get all of his rogues gallery, and I think the multiverse is the key to that. And so I think we're going to eventually see these characters cross over, and that's going to be more of the main Spider-Man that we see going forward. So I'm looking forward to the future of this. We're obviously getting a season 2. The reception has been very well, most parts, and I'm very interested to see where some of these threads head, especially the reveal of his dad being alive and in prison. I want to know where they're going to go with that and what secret May is hiding, because she knows something about why his dad's in prison, but it doesn't seem like Pete's aware of that. So we got to see. But overall, yeah, I thought it was really good. Action very well done. The acting, I felt very attached to this Peter, this version, and I kind of like the causality nature of this series too. I thought that was a cool spin on the origin story for Spider-Man. That pretty much he was responsible in ways what outside means of his own becoming of Spider-Man. So yeah, like I said, overall, really, really good. So looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, I definitely I was the last one to watch it, so I definitely went in not knowing necessarily what to expect, but having heard good things from both of you to check it out. And I liked the progression from episode to episode. I thought it only like got better towards the end, and all of the concepts were snowballing and really converging towards what ended up to me the last episode was the best, and it almost enhanced the first episode, the way it brought everything full circle. And I love that just element of storytelling, and I think that that type of thing is what has made like some of the best MCU connected tissue of those films where they're developing storylines from one thing into the next. Loved all the cameos. As mentioned, Daredevil, Doctor Strange, Tony Stark's Iron Man. All of that was really great. The in-world kind of like Easter eggs or teasers of like all the different interns like Amadeus Cho potentially being a Hulk in the future. We could see that. Those seeds are all planted kind of for that. Um, I do think that it does exactly what it kind of needs to do as a standalone Spider-Man story. Um, does it? It was an origin story, but didn't feel forced. We have the absence of Uncle Ben, but the introduction of the element of Peter's father. So I thought that again, anytime where something was subtracted, there was a balance or something put somewhere else. The relationship with Tombstone was cool. No MJ, but I thought the Pearl and then Nico connection was filled that void very well, and then even the introducing Harry into that element made it better. And we love Black Norman Osborn with waves um, during Black History Month. Like we need that, and I thought he was a really great character. Almost comes off as like a Lex Luthor type, where even
Yeah,
the way that
Look like
he,
him.
yeah,
kind of. Yeah, Black Luthor with waves.
and his intent was definitely you kind of watch his character progress throughout the I thought him and Peter's progression were the most interesting to watch throughout. To me, Scorpion was a top tier villain, um, just without needing to do,
Aranya.
yeah, without needing to do much, but was impactful when he was there. Wasn't even in the last episode really, and but still like completely had a great effect, and that the fights were amazing. Made Spider-Man look
Hmm.
vulnerable, made him look like he could be beat. I don't think you could ask for much more from a villain in that perspective. Pushed all the characters to kind of like a threshold where they needed to go to the next level in order to survive. It was a nice treat, surprise for me. I liked it. I would probably give it like an 8.25 out of 10. I'm interested to see where they go next with it. The crossover potential in general. Maybe we get another just like Marvel animated universe. I would love to see that, of course, but it does kind of seem like the way that Kevin Feige and team are kind of running everything is, hey, what is going to generate the most revenue? What's giving us the most hype? Let's put our eggs in those baskets and kind of just write it as we go. And if they keep telling stories like this, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was about to say, the Easter eggs I really like like right after the intro. And speaking of which, the intro is really cool too. There's an Easter egg within that, the OG Spider-Man song and
Hmm.
being able to flip it. But I love how after the intro you get that kind of the comic book cover, and it's always like a reference to maybe Amazing Fantasy 15, the very first appearance of Spider-Man, or there was some iconic covers like when he decided to kind of give up the mantle. And I believe that was like the episode right
Hmm.
before he fought Scorpion when he still was trying to figure out
With
whether
his
he
new suit.
what was going on with the suit. And I really liked all of those connections. Uh, we saw the iconic Spider-Man line flipped once again. I think Aunt May kind of had her spin on it in No Way Home. That was slightly different, and then now we get this great power comes great respect instead of responsibility, and it fits perfectly with Norman's character, and I'm excited to see him transform into the villain, or at least the villain that we expect. They could easily throw a curveball at us at any point. Speaking of curveballs, there were some things that I think some folks were kind of like, well, where were they coming or going with it? Like they gender switched Dr. Connors, which I thought it worked perfectly with the story, and it's but I know that some folks online, some diehard fans, feel like, well, we could have gotten Kurt Connors. The last time they teased Kurt Connors was in a van in Venom 3, and it turned out not to be anything related to Kurt Connors. Um, but I thought all the characters were really good. I mean, the fact that they had like Otto Octavius be like, it felt like every single part of him was right out of the comic book. It was really perfect. And I think those are things that people really liked about the show, and just how much homage it paid to like classic Spider-Man like story beats like just throughout. And I felt the writing was really tight too. Like we had these parallel stories with Peter and Lonnie, and all of the decisions that they're making, and they're pushing away their loved ones because they're going deeper and deeper into this role that they're destined to be. And then all of that kind of culminating in the ending there. How do we feel about this compared to some of the other TV shows? Let's say the '90s Spider-Man that was on Fox, or Spectacular Spider-Man, which I think is the one that most people say is their favorite. There was like the MTV Spider-Man with Neil Patrick Harris that is out there too. I think that's become kind of a cult classic. But like, how does this one stack up with some of those other ones that everyone loves?
For me, I mean, I think it can stand toe to toe with any one of them. Um, I'll have my, nostalgia to older ones, and I think that that definitely introduces bias. But when I look at it holistically of, what they set out to do and the level of storytelling, the unique art style, the actual compelling characters on screen, that this I would hold a candle to any of the others. I didn't love the Kurt Connors gender swap, but I think in the capacity again of this season that it works fine. Because Dr. Connors was almost like a nurturing figure for Peter in like a lab where he was dealing with a lot, trying to hide like who he is. That seemed like it was someone who was on his side. Um, and I thought that that was very much needed, but I would also miss out on kind of like Kurt Connors like and his motivation as a father, um and that all being part of his story and fighting between his humanity and also kind of like the creature that he becomes. um I would be interested to see how you would tell that story in a different way, but I do love that aspect of the character.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think it's the worst thing. It was interesting to see. I was like, oh, okay, what a Carla Connors. Like, okay, you know. But to your point, it's I feel like who he is as a person very much connects to like Peter in the sense of him being a mentor at times, and like you said, having that nurturing nature. But I think you can get that with Carla. Maybe we'll find out Peter's mom was a scientist, and so maybe we'll get like the nurturing sense from like a mother. Even though he has May, I think there's that. Oh, that connection that he could potentially have had with his mom, if she was also a scientist, and maybe they're going to probably set that up for like Carla at some point.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but who knows? There's a lot of, like you said, there's interesting routes that can go with this story, with this swap. Even how mothers and fathers respond very differently with their kids, and how she may react, when inevitably becomes the lizard, or if they do, maybe they do have a spin.
Or maybe she has a
So, but
husband who becomes the lizard, and it's almost like
it,
a red herring in that way or thing.
exactly. There's a lot they can do with that.
Yeah.
So, but to answer the initial question, I do think this can also hold a candle to a lot of them. I think personally, it uh it may be probably the closest thing to people, having unanimously Spectacular Spider-Man as their favorite. I think this is the only one that can really challenge it. I personally really like the Ultimate Spider-Man universe. I think because while some don't like that, it's a little more childlike, I would say, more for children. I personally really liked the Ultimate Spider-Man universe because of the connectivity, where he would go
Yeah.
and had, there would be other superheroes of that universe and they would stop things. And even when they did the Spider-Verse storyline in there, that's always one of my favorite, stories to adapt if they do anything Spider-Verse related. So I really enjoyed the Ultimate Spider-Man, but I think this here can contend with the 90s. I think the 90s has a lot of nostalgia. I think, you can go back, watch it, and you can smile. You'll probably laugh a lot at some of the cheesy 90s dialogue, because of the times. And honestly, just the 90s with anything media related, I feel like is riddled with things you can just clown. The repeated framings because they didn't have enough money to
With the
just draw new
city
things.
when
So
he's swinging through the
this,
city.
so it's things like that that you can go back and like, yeah, they didn't have a lot of money to work with, but there is something special about that
And
90s
Aunt May was
series.
ancient
But
in that one. This one, Aunt May
and yeah,
was
we actually
like 27.
Aunt May's just getting younger and younger. Where's that? We need to get the clip or the little picture showing how she just gets younger and younger through each
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been
adaptation.
getting younger towards the. Yeah, no,
Before
well,
we,
this isn't the first time that they've going back to the topic of Kurt Connors. I mean, they did this with Doc Ock with
Mhm.
get into the
Octavia
Spider Verse.
into Spider-Verse, and it actually had, I think, a ripple effect into Spider-Man material going forward, where when I think
Yeah.
about Spidey and friends, for the little ones, I mean, Doc Ock is, the female Doc Ock. So it's like
Mhm.
these type of decisions do kind of move things in a different direction there, and for better or for worse. I mean, I think the Doc Ock from the Spider Verse films was really good. It was a really good twist, and it was kind of a twist in the middle of the movie too, right? So it was.
Hmm.
I think it served its purpose within the story, and I liked Dr. Connors within the context of season one and kind of the character that she was, and basically always there for Peter, and making sure he doesn't get in trouble. So where what are we thinking in terms of like season two? Like, what are things that we want to see more, or I think they've kind of laid the perfect framework moving forward for this show. I don't think there's really much that they need to do differently. I think there's so many different, like you said, the Rogues Gallery now can really be used and not be confined by the storytelling in the live action films, right? So, well, what are we thinking
Yeah.
about season two?
I want to see more of those cameos with. I want to see the Marvel world actually feel like it's a living, breathing thing rather than just the isolated moment. And that's what I loved about Iron Man and Doctor Strange kind of just popping up out of nowhere. Daredevil, even though he doesn't leave Hell's Kitchen, but he's still there. He's ever present. And I want to see that fully realized because the reason why we don't get an MCU is just like logistically not possible with all the top actors and expensive to get everyone on
Yeah,
screen. But here, the way that you can really start pulling things together, and I almost think it's something that Kevin Feige is like testing almost like storylines where it's like, okay, how can I build this into the lore that we can leverage either later in the movies or going towards that Secret Wars, like converge worlds? Because they obviously had other plans to begin with the multiverse saga, and some of those have shifted. So I wonder if another way for some of those stories that never got to be landed or fully realized could come out in these different universes, or in different mediums too, where it's like this animated storytelling. But it is again referencing MCU things, but it's like MCU adjacent, and it has the feel of MCU very much, and is at the same quality. So why would you not leverage that? And we recently heard how the MCU is now acknowledging all of the Netflix series as canon as well. So it seems that that is the direction that they're kind of going to have a larger pool of lore to pull from, and really keep building out the MCU. So here you can go crazy and really tell some of those stories that might be way too high budget to even grasp the concept of in a film and actually have it come off properly. You can establish that concept here, and then MCU can either deal with the after effects of it, or um, you can build up to it. If it goes that crazy, I mean, they're not above telling the same story twice if it comes across that great. Maybe we get it just in a slightly different version later down the line, especially if MCU sees that, oh, fans actually liked this. So I think that could be an important piece of these animated series is, okay, if the fans are showing that they have an appetite for it, then that's only going to lend to the live action films being able to tell more of those stories, and for it to be greenlit, as in, like, yeah, no, let's throw in a random Iron Man cameo and then have that build into, all right, when Peter's doing his thing throughout New York, not only can he bounce between Oscorp, but Doctor Strange might pop up in Greenwich Village. He might run into Daredevil on a rooftop. He also could have Tony Stark looking out for him as well. And to me, that's the most amazing part about like comics and being a comic book fan, and the reason why you read different series is because you're like, oh wait, Fantastic Four is in New York. Oh, and so is Spider-Man. And when they cross over, it's amazing. But in your head as a fan, you're like, okay, I know that these heroes are all in the same geographical area. Your head canon starts going crazy with the things that you could imagine when they team up or cross paths. And I just don't think that we get enough of that. And it's for good reason, usually to be more centralized and establish focus. But I think for, we're decade deep into the MCU, there are fans who know enough about all of these heroes to really start being able to crank up this woven storytelling.
Yeah, that's interesting. A point to make about fleshing out the universe a little bit in the sense of the connectivity, like where you know you have a lot of characters who are very adjacent, to each other because Spider-Man's in Queens, and then you have like Miles in Brooklyn, you have Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen, you got Fantastic Four in like Manhattan, like they're all over this just that one city, and yeah, you wonder like, oh, why couldn't they help? It's funny because, and I'm gonna go on a little bit of like side tangent here, but I feel like that your statement, I agree with you. I totally think we should have more of that. And you see comments even online that some people want that too, but then there's also the complaining that there's too much connectivity and homework to do before watching things, which I think we'll probably get a little bit deeper into later on in the show here. But yeah, it's I would like to sometimes see that too. I do think we should also have some centralization. Like if it is Spider-Man, if it is Daredevil, make sure there's still that main focus. But there's nothing wrong with having, especially if it's a series, maybe an episode or two or three, depending on how long the series is, where you have a crossover where it's like, oh, Daredevil is investigating someone, and it so happens that Spider-Man was chasing someone that was going towards the same person that Daredevil's investigating. So now they're together and they have to solve this problem together. Like that's cool. You can make it very by happen chance. It doesn't have to be planned out or anything like that. So, um, but things I would like to also see in season two. Um, we get the symbiote cliffhanger. I would like to see what they're going to do with that. Are they going to lean more and do what we see in the video Spider-Man 2, the video game, and maybe we're going to get Harry become a version of Venom as well. Are we going to see Eddie become a Venom? But there's no Eddie Brock yet. And if they do it, Eddie Brock is going to be the same age as Pete, and if that's the case, like, what's the connection, to like if he is gonna have the beef with Pete, it seems like it would have to be someone that is connected to him in some type of way, because Eddie's always connected to him. So,
Yeah.
and he's
Well,
not gonna be a photographer.
I think even with like Not that it won't exist in this universe because I think they will establish it at some point, but like we don't get the Daily Bugle, we don't get Peter as a journalist, we don't get that aspect, and that is kind of typically part of his connection with Eddie Brock too. So
Mm-hmm.
how is that going to be either addressed or how would they develop that? And I'm open to a different version of that story being told. I liked the super genius Peter. Um, I think I almost feel like not to mention Marvel Rivals, but to this version of a Peter would be like the grandfather to Penny Parker, and it would like make 1,000,000% sense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just almost of like how this is the Peter that would have developed Parker Industries and then went on to have a granddaughter who lives in a spider suit and fights crime. Like, I think it's establishing and building almost that version of a Peter, and that's probably my favorite version of Peter, but I still enjoy and like that version of Peter. I really love Peter as kind of like the clever, smart, and like
Mm-hmm.
also a little bit more charismatic Peter. Um, he's still always kind of like goofy and nerdy no matter what. But I like that more shit talking version of Spider. That's like an ultimate Spider-Man. But that also comes with, I think, a much more mature, older Peter, usually like around college or post-college age, to really
Mm-hmm.
lean into that. So for a freshman in high school, like I think that this version of Peter is another solid addition. um, it's hashed out pretty well. I like how it places him with different peer groups, like between the super genius interns, to his regular high school classmates, to the wealth disparity and gap between him, Harry, and Nico. I
Mm-hmm.
think it gave us a lot of different layers of Peter. And it was really interesting to see Peter Parker in that light, considering how much I love the other Peter, still being able to enjoy this one, even if I can admit that I still like the other one more. Um, this one was well done and well written, and it also adds something different to that dimension of Peter Parker. Whereas, like, if you would have told me before, like, Peter founded like a tech company and then had a granddaughter who would be in a spider suit, I'd be like, all right, that's kind of like that must have been a different Peter because he was not concerned about that stuff. But it's now I can totally see like, oh, it would be exactly like that Peter from Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man who would become that.
It's something I actually lean into a little bit in the Spider-Man 2 game as well. That Peter does have deeper interests that lean into like his scientific mind,
Hmm.
um, and he wants to try to do more of that. And even Miles says, "Hey, man, look, you taught me a lot. I've been doing this on my own for a while now too, in Brooklyn and everything. Like, I got this, So I do think they are leaning more into a Spider-Man that is like that,
Yeah.
because maybe again they're who knows, maybe Sony is going to eventually just give Spider-Man back to Marvel and like, do everything that they want, and maybe that's what they're hoping for, is to eventually set up like a futuristic Spider-Man series, or what
Yeah.
if, where they showcase Penny Parker. I
Oh,
think
to
what
your
if,
point, um, just because you just mentioned it,
yeah,
this entire season felt like a long expansion of Marvel's What If, and it's almost like
yeah.
what they were testing for that series was, okay, would people like to see these alternate storylines? And this was like a full season of What If, but all
Hmm.
focused on Peter Parker.
And we even get the Uatu, you know,
Yeah.
cameo as well. So yeah, I think just with season two, like I said, to your point, I agree. Like, more connections sometimes in certain episodes. It's not to be all the time. I want to see where they go with the Venom capture. Does that go to Harry? Does Norman end up using it? Um, Obviously Peter's gonna get it first, or somewhere at some point because we got to get that classic, symbiote Spider-Man. But and I also want to see, um, I want to see how far forward they jump into the timeline. I would like to see maybe a year or two go by of him just being Spider-Man. So maybe next time we see him, he's going into his junior year.
Mhm.
That'd be kind of nice to see because then we can kind of see him more relaxed into the role, more confident. Him and Harry had more time to develop as, best friends or closer friends. We can see more of things with like Nico. Maybe they do connect some of these older TV shows like The Runaways, Cloak and Dagger, with the Marvel rivals
Yeah.
becoming more popular again, or just becoming popular, making certain characters popular again. It'd be nice to kind of see some of those things as well. But yeah, season two, I'm really excited for. I hope we get that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
saw a lot of those cameos in X Men as well. In X Men '97, right? Spider Man and
That's true.
Captain
Yeah.
America, and there was
Mhm.
Cloak and
Iron
Dagger, wasn't
Man.
there? Wasn't that
No Cloak and Dagger.
Cloak and Dagger was an
Oh, we didn't
Ultimate,
get to
I
see
think.
Cloak. It was
Cloak
an
and
Ultimate.
Daggers in
Yeah.
New York as well, though, right? I believe so, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
they're
So
they're they're in New York as well. I'm pretty sure the Ultimate show has them, and I like the Ultimate show a lot too because of all the different connect. It does feel like the '90s show if the '90s show was owned by Disney instead of Fox,
mhm.
Yeah.
and they had money to play with. So I mean, this show was so good. I really enjoyed it. Not saying that I kind of had forgotten about Spider-Man, but I was kind of my mindset was, all right, well, we're not going to see Tom Holland Spider-Man for maybe another 2 years, maybe this Avengers film, and even that there was uncertainty. It seemed. So and I remember when this was announced, like you said, I think most people were skeptical or excited about there being content, but the animation style was a cool throwback, but how was it going to actually translate into a show? Uh, is it going to be the type of show that doesn't really do anything? I think Disney has this bad reputation of certain shows, especially with their most popular IPs, where the show doesn't really do much. But you'd watch one episode of the show, and so many different things happen per episode, and it would always end on a cliffhanger leading into the next one, and it was very bingeable. And the episodes weren't long either, so you could finish the whole thing in like 4 hours, which is as long as a Batman movie. So uh,
Yeah.
it's I think it's a good time to be a Spider-Man fan. I think the things people are upset about, I don't believe are really that big of a deal, especially when you have other iterations of the characters, and it is all within the context of the multiverse. So if we want to do things like switch up the appearance of a character, I don't think it's a big deal as long as the essence and who that character is, the identity of that character is still the same. So I think it's a big win. I think Marvel Animation's been doing some really good shows. I know What If is very controversial. It's more hit or miss, but this X Men show last year and then this one, I think they really hit a home run on both of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm glad to see these animated shows at the forefront, and even like Kevin Feige seemingly being as hands-on with a project like this bodes well for how the studio is viewing this avenue for storytelling. And again, I think it just makes some of those things that are much harder to want to do on the film level. It brings them down to a ground level and makes them possible. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we as fans want. And I think that's also why Spider-Verse did so well. As Quay mentioned, the mixture of the 3D with the 2D art world, and being able to tell a story that's as immersive as Spider-Verse, where, he's going through different dimensions and all the different versions of Spider-Man. Um, to be able to do that. And we saw that film had to be, almost chopped in half. Like Infinity War Endgame style, and we're waiting for part two. But that's just how jam-packed that story was, and that's what you can do when you're not limited by live action.
Agreed. I think animation will start in terms of the Marvel universe will start to kind of make a comeback on Disney Plus. I think that's where they're going to be able to make more of a splash. I think if they do live action stuff, it has to be more serious, gritty stuff like the Daredevil, Defenders level characters, the street level characters. I do think it's possible to do series where, it's maybe cosmic or magical, but it has to be characters that maybe are obscure that people can grow to love. Like I think a character like Werewolf by Night was one of those characters, super obscure, but everyone absolutely loved that 1 hour special. Um, whether you saw it in black and white or if you saw it in color, like it's very, very well done. I think people want more of that. Um, for even I guess Moon Knight's probably not getting a season two, but even Moon Knight, people loved Mark, people loved the story, people love Steven and all of like the mystery behind that and Khonshu and oh, okay, we're getting more lore to like how divinity and the afterlife work with the MCU and I I think, with live action shows, again, it's going to have to lean more into those types of stories, but I think the animation will give them so much more flexibility to tell more crazy stories or stories that we know, but they're a little different, like how this is an MCU adjacent Spider-Man, but we're doing things much differently, but it's still very familiar. Um, so I think again, like I said, I do think the animation will start to make a comeback with the MCU on Disney Plus. I think that's going to be where we're going to see a lot of shows kind of pop up now.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
can do a lot of cool stories with animation. I mean, you see DC do it all the time. They're constantly putting out, animated films, animated series, and overall, I think they've done a good job over there. And I think Marvel should copy that, especially if the live action TV show isn't hitting as much. I think just the audience in general just expects different things from live action. It's almost they expect every TV show to be HBO and HBO quality, and it
Hmm.
makes it tough on I think the producers and script writers and casts and to get everything and to have it to be under budget, right? If you want to make a TV show that's HBO level, your budget has to be more than an MCU film almost. So there's definitely limitations there, but I mean next week, we're gonna have 2 episodes of Daredevil, and then we'll have Daredevil week to week for I think a couple weeks. In terms of animated shows, I believe the next animated show will be the Wakanda show, if I'm not mistaken. I
That should be
Wakanda.
fun. Yeah.
There'll be some stories, some history, uh, historical
with the
kind of
Dora Milaje,
throwbacks.
right?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be an episode with Okoye, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've read, and then there's gonna be I think some throwbacks, maybe T'Challa's dad, or they can even bring it back even further. Maybe do like a Captain
Yeah,
America episode or
his great.
something. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think I mean we have a couple films this year too that we're really excited about: Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four, and in terms of the shows, I think Ironheart is the other show that is going to pop up or is supposed to pop up later this year. So that'll be interesting to see what they did with that character. After everything that happened in Wakanda Forever. So we've been. It's funny because I said that we'll see if we can keep this discussion under half an hour. We're almost hitting an hour here. Any last thoughts about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Do you recommend people to go see it, or only folks that are fans of Spider-Man, or is this one of those where you can just blindly recommend it to anyone that is slightly interested in the action genre and you think that they'll pick this up and really run with it?
I would lean towards blindly recommend because I think it's something where, yeah, if you are aware of like the MCU, it's cool that certain things are referenced. If you have like a little bit of knowledge of comic books, it's nice to see the Easter eggs and some of the lore that's being set up in season one. But I don't think you need any of that to enjoy what the show presents in terms of character storytelling. So if you have never seen an animated superhero series, you could pick this up, watch it, and just fall in love with the story. And a question that I have for the rest of the panel is, with in light of Moon Knight season two kind of being canceled, the Netflix shows becoming canon, little things like Nico being a character teased at in this series. Do we think that a potential Midnight Suns is in the works, whether it would be animated or live action? And is that something you'd want to see?
So I'm
I
gonna
mean,
answer the
instead of
question
Blade, right?
first. So
Oh,
yeah,
you
I
could
was gonna
put
say.
Blade in that? Yeah.
So I'm gonna answer the reception question of should where should we lean with this in terms of recommending this show. Um, yeah, I lean more into blindly recommending. I do think to a certain degree, just to a certain degree, I do think if you're a hardcore fan, you may be upset with the way this Spider-Man strength is portrayed. I know he was going against some superpowered people.
He's like over here getting hit by
In terms
cars
of
and intersections and
yeah, and and just that whole excuse maybe he's still too young. We didn't even necessarily see like fully if his spider sense is like kicked in yet, and if he even has a spider sense. But I don't know. So I think there's going to be certain things like that. If you're a hardcore fan, that you can really nitpick on. But other than that, no, I think you can blithely recommend this to anyone, and it's very palatable. If you're a young fan, old fan, doesn't really matter. Um, but to your point, Randy, I've been saying that if they couldn't get a solo Blade movie, then we should get a Midnight Suns project, whether that is in a live action TV series or a live action movie. I think a live action TV series will at least allow for all the characters to get a lot of shine that people don't know about because there's unless you've seen Werewolf by Night, you don't know who he is. Unless you've seen Moon Knight, you don't know who Mark Steven is. Know who you don't know who Blade is at least, unless you know you've seen the old Blade to get an idea of like okay how Blade operates. You're probably not going to understand who this Blade is, so they would have to kind of explain some
Imagine
things.
Jared Leto Morbius comes back for Midnight Suns.
I wouldn't mind your
That would be
Ghost Rider
amazing.
in. You can bring Ghost Rider in too, and it depends on
Yeah.
what Ghost Rider you want. Whether it's Johnny Storm or Reyes.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, they already had a run. He's just a shield. They can easily bring him back and make him the main Ghost Rider. So I think, yeah, Midnight Suns, like I said, live action TV show or movie, and make it a 2 hour and 20 minute movie. That's
Yeah.
fast paced. It doesn't like give us time though to get to learn these characters, but yeah, don't try to squeeze things in like a 2 hour setting. I think we've gotten into this, oh, if it's over 2 hours it's a long movie, I can't sit down and watch this movie. And it's like you can sit down and watch this movie for 2 hours. I mean, you can sit down and binge a 20
TV series.
episode 1 hour series, like 20 episode 1 hour long series. It's just it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think that would be a great project for them to do. And like I said, it could just people want to see the supernatural and darker side of the MCU. We don't get to dive too deep into that unless it's a Doctor Strange movie, and there's other ways we can do that. And I think that would be a great way of doing that.
Yeah.
yeah, Doctor Strange, especially Multiverse of Madness with Sam Raimi, it really hit on the horror. And I mean, Werewolf by Night, especially in the black and white. I remember when it came out. I believe it was Halloween when it first debuted, and
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
it really, some of those scenes were so dark and chilling, and some of the violence were like off screen, and it was just as effective as showing someone get eaten alive by some beast, on screen. Uh, well, I think we all have this consensus in terms of how we feel about the show. That I think we're really excited for this show, and I think just for Marvel animation moving forward. And I think, uh, we did our Brave New World last time, and I think the MCU's in good shape in the sense that there's enough content, quality content, for the fans to chew on until the next movie comes out. And then I think just hopefully this Daredevil show knocks out of park too. And then I think you'll start hearing the chants of Marvel's back until there's some movie that people don't like, and then they'll say that, Marvel's mid, and then
It's
it's just like a
mid.
cycle. It'll just keep going up and down, and all that we can really hope for as fans is that the studio sticks with their vision. I think they have a good vision. I think over the last couple of years, because of the criticism, they've been kind of moving almost in a reactionary way, almost like when you're in sports, right? You're just reacting to people attacking you instead of anticipating the next move and really planning out the plan of attack and sticking to it. They're allowing, I think, the backlash to dictate how they move, especially with the stories, and we talked about that last time too. But
Hmm.
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, I'd give it at least an 8. I think Randy said 8.6, 8.7. I think at least an 8. I don't know if it reaches a 9, but I really enjoyed it, and I think most folks, especially those who like binging TV shows, could finish this show easily in an evening.
Yeah, I give it an 8.25 or an 8.3. I think it's like right there. It's a great start, great foundation. I'm excited to see what comes next. And the art style I thought was realized and utilized really well. I'd like to see them expand upon more. And now that they know that it's successful, like just up the ante with it.
Yeah, I give it. I think it can fall anywhere between a 8 to 8.5. I think that's very very reasonable ranking there. I think it's comical, it's lighthearted, it can get dark at times. Like Scorpion was pretty crazy. It can even be a little sad. Like I said, I think Lonnie's storyline is kind of sad when you really think about it. Um, but it hits on all the notes. I really think if anything, the only thing that could have made it better was maybe more episodes. Um, maybe a little bit more um, of certain characters, certain villains. But again, we're getting more seasons, obviously, at least another season for now. And yeah, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm really, really hoping that we really get more content like this overall in the MCU. I don't think there's really anything wrong. I want to see more of these types of stories. I want to see, Daredevil be successful. I want to see Thunderbolts be successful. I really want to see at the very end of the day just good stories being told, and no matter what the reception is online or throughout the grapevine, I don't really think the MCU has been failing. I think it's in great shape. I think it has been just as successful, and I think they just need to stay true to their plans and not be as reactionary to Sal's point. Like I think we talked about that a little bit last episode, and as long as we can get to this, okay, these are the stories we want to tell, and we're going to stick by this and go with this, I think they will be in great hands. And even with the reactionary behavior to making stuff, it still has been pretty good. So if I want to know what the original plan was someday what they wanted to do and how they wanted to tell some of these stories. Even hear about like what if, we talked about it. What if season three, went very differently than it was supposed to go? We were supposed to get all these different types of stories, but I guess they didn't want certain characters to be talked about. So I guess when we get season four of What if they decide to ever bring that back, we'll get more of those wild stories. But yeah, I just think we have to, get to the end goal, hit the end game here with Doomsday and everything, and then eventually, we'll get this nice reset, and we're gonna have all these different cool stories we can tell. Which I'm interested to kind of see what they do. Like, are we gonna stay in one timeline in the future? Are we gonna have just different stories, and we can just tell different stories without it always connecting? I don't know how they're gonna go with that, but again, the future is bright in my opinion, and I don't think really there's ever been a fall off in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, it feels like this Daredevil season is a really pivotal moment.
Hmm.
Because we know how in the past, like, when a good like Netflix series comes out, it kind of just takes over the timeline. It's the chatter of everyone because it's accessible. Everyone's watching it at the same time. The word of mouth spreads like wildfire, and everyone is like, "Wait, I need to see what's going on with that show." And I think to that point, if it is received well and it does have that kind of hype moment, I think we do see a bit of the tide starting to turn in terms of the public perception that the like MCU is washed and everything that they're putting out now is like recycled garbage. If Daredevil's done right, I think a lot of those people who have been sitting out of a lot of the multiverse saga content will get pulled back in, or at the very least watch that show.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think most fans are excited. I mean, when did Daredevil come out? It was 2013,
15, 16.
15. Yeah, at this point almost a decade ago, and some of the people that were watching were just kids when they probably first started watching it. Now they're all grown up, and this is kind of the next chapter in Charlie Cox's Daredevil, and we've been treated to a couple of cameos from him in various stories, whether it was Echo, we had the fight scene in Echo, this
Mm.
one in Spider Man, and also Spider Man No Way Home, we had Matt Murdock show up to defend Peter Parker. And this is exactly what we wanted from a connected universe, right? These characters will just randomly pop up. We don't need to know every single detail on why they're there at that day, what they drank before they showed up in that scene, but to just be able to put those people in the same room and have it lead to events where they all kind of link up together to beat some common foe. That's all I think we want as fans. So um, yeah, I mean, unless either of you have any other last thoughts, I think we had a really good discussion, and uh,
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of things for us to talk about in upcoming weeks with that Daredevil show. So, we can always leave any of those talking points for later. So, good stuff, and we'll see everyone next time.
Yes,
all
sir.
right, guys. Yes, sir. See you next time.
All right, catch you later, boys.